Chapter 12:18, Clue. Give it a try too. Klein handed the iron-black long skewer to the other residents of Moon City. Their throats bobbed up and down as they couldn't help but swallow another mouthful of saliva. However, they didn't immediately respond. All of them cast their gazes at the high priest, waiting for him to nod. In his animal hide clothes, Nim took out an item. It looked like a magnifying glass with a handle. At a glance, Klein almost imagined that he had seen a monocle. This fright made his heart skip a beat. Thankfully, he managed to control himself in time to confirm the details. Holding the metallic handle, he placed the glass object in front of his right eye and observed Ruse for a few seconds through the lens. After a brief silence, he put down the item and nodded at the other Moon City residents. People other than Ruse finally reached out their hands and carefully removed a mushroom from the iron-black long skewer and stuffed it into their mouths. The item that was void of nauseous smells and foulness made them instantly become intoxicated. Without caring about the scorching feeling in their oral cavities, they swallowed the mushrooms into their stomachs and instinctively reached out for another one. However, all the mushrooms on the iron-black long skewer had already been distributed. Nim retracted his gaze from the iron-black long skewer and waited for J.M. and Sparrow to continue explaining his experiences and the fool's teachings. Klein looked around and repeated the words he had previously said. The surrounding mushrooms can be taken at any time, apart from the pure black ones. In addition, they have to be fully cooked before they can be eaten. Otherwise, you will be cursed. The residents of Moon City no longer hesitated. They immediately stood up and chose the mushrooms that they had been longing for. With a glance, Klein added, when the white mushrooms are cooked, they easily split open and have liquids flow out. You need to prepare some containers or drink them once that happens. Without waiting for Ruse and company to respond, he continued the topic that he had previously stopped mid-explanation. He went on until he mentioned how he heard the voices in the grayish-white fog chant Mr. Fool's honorific name. Seeing that high priest Nim so absorbed by his tales, to the point of being a little moved, Klein deliberated and said, "There are still many ways to make the grayish-white fog react, but they are all related to my lord." This was a reasonable guess. This was because not only was there one hanging person, but there wasn't only one way to enter the world above the gray fog. If Emperor Roselle had brought the mysterious silver plate that he had replicated here, there was a high chance that the invisible barrier would produce an anomaly. Of course, the prerequisite was that the Emperor belonged to one of the three pathways of seer, apprentice, or marauder. Seeing that there were no doubts from the others, Klein said warmly, "According to my observations, there isn't only one beyonder pathway in Moon City." The grizzled Nim didn't hide it from him and simply replied, "Yes, when we were selected to come to Moon City, the Oracle had intentionally ensured that there was a comprehensive record of beyonder pathways. Unfortunately, after all these years and the repeated disasters, many of the potion formulas and beyonder ingredients of the various pathways have been lost." "Which pathway are you from?" Klein asked casually as he looked at the residents of Moon City using monster bones to roast the mushrooms. "I'm a Night Watcher," Nim said frankly. "Sequence 4 Night Watcher of the Evernight pathway." Klein nodded slightly and asked, "Did anything unusual happen near this grayish-white fog?" After pondering for about 10 seconds, Nim with his pockmarked face said, "Yes." Klein's heart stirred as he calmly asked, "What kind of abnormality was it?" Nim glanced at the mushrooms that emitted fragrant smells, and he deliberated over his words. A small hill suddenly disappeared, leaving only a deep crater in the ground. There were no signs of an explosion in that area, nor was there any soil scattered around. "What's going on? That's a little bizarre." As he threw the mushroom's roots into the fire to turn them into fuel for the flames, Klein asked without any change in expression, "Did you investigate further?" "Yes." The high priest of Moon City nodded and said, "An investigation team encountered a demonic wolf there. It wasn't a demonic wolf that has already rotted or mutated, but the kind of demonic wolf from a long time ago." "Demonic wolf?" Klein didn't expect to hear such information. His pupils changed slightly as he asked, "What did that demonic wolf look like?" Nim unconsciously took a deep breath and said, It's the same as the demonic wolves described in ancient literature, but it's even bigger. Even though its 8 legs are on the ground, it's still as tall as 2 or 3 people combined. Its fur wasn't pure black, it exuded a dark and deep feeling. Its eyes were very strange. The pupils, black pupils, took up a large part of the eyes. Also, there was a tuft of gray short hair on its head. Isn't that the dark demonic wolf, Cotter? It actually came to the far east of the forsaken land of the gods, and was involved in an anomaly. If the power of the Western continent's disappearance really comes from Sephra Castle, it would still be quite normal for it to attract the mythical creatures that corresponded to Miracle Invoker. Klein frowned slightly and said, "It didn't attack your investigation team." Klein had deliberately used it, instead of to prevent frightening the residents of Moon City. In his opinion, it was very easy for the dark demonic wolf, Cotter, to wipe out an investigation team. It didn't even need to pay a huge price to turn the city into his marionette kingdom. Yet, this mythical creature had apparently spared Moon City. If not for the spirit body threads that he had seen in advance, and that he confirmed their conditions, Klein would have suspected that he was only talking to a few marionettes. "No, it left in a hurry," Nim replied. This doesn't match the suspicious and cautious nature of the dark demonic wolf. What frightened him so much that he fled in such a hurry? He didn't even have the time to silence the people who saw him. Or rather, there's something special about the people guarding Moon City under the ancient sun god's revelation, and unless it's necessary, the dark demonic wolf wouldn't attack them. Klein continued without any change in his tone. Did it leave any tracks? No, Nim firmly shook his head. Other than the hill turning into a deep crater, we didn't discover anything unusual. As his thoughts raced, Klein tried to ask from another angle. When did this happen? The more he understood an object from the past, the more he could make contact with it in the fog of history. After some thought, Nim said, 2 years ago, 2 months, and 10 days ago. He immediately explained, there are too few things worth recording. It left a deep impression on me. 2 years ago, 2 months, and 10 days ago. Currently, it's 8th September 1351, and subtracting that time, it would be 28th June 1349. Klein's right hand suddenly trembled slightly. His pupils and his expression were normal, but this was a result of using his clown powers to control them. He remembered very clearly that on 28th June 1349, he had transmigrated. It was the day he became Klein Moretti. It was the day he repeated the luck enhancement ritual and entered Sephra Castle. The abnormality here, the appearance of the dark demonic wolf, and the hasty departure of this mythical creature were all related to me. A huge wave of emotions surged through his heart. For a moment, he couldn't find an explanation and pretended that nothing had happened. He thought for a moment and asked, did something similar happen in the past 2,000 to 3,000 years? No, Nim gave a clear answer. What about 208 years ago? Did anything special happen? Klein asked. That was the time when Emperor Roselle transmigrated to this world. After hesitating for 2 seconds, Nim said, I can't tell you the answer. I need to go back and read the corresponding records. Thankfully, the information and documents in the past 3 centuries haven't been damaged. At this point, he added, my limited impression tells me that there shouldn't be anything special. If that's the case, then the cause of this anomaly was because I entered the world above the gray fog and bound Sephra Castle to myself. Klein nodded slightly and didn't ask further. He simply said, tell me where the crater is. By the time the high priest, Nim, gave an answer, the mushrooms that the residents of Moon City had grilled could be eaten. Some of them took a small bite of the white mushrooms and were scalded by the milk inside. They couldn't bear to spit it out. Some chewed repeatedly, reminiscing over the faint sweetness. Some of them couldn't stop eating at all. Nim was taken aback by what he saw, as though he couldn't believe that these people were from Moon City. Every one of them was showing the conflicted looks of having cravings and being satisfied. Their expressions looked twisted, but they were brimming with pure joy. High Priest, try it as well. Ruse, whose eyes were very close to each other, handed a mushroom covered in golden spots that emitted a unique and sweet fragrance to Nim. After hesitating for a moment, Nim carefully used the magnifying glass to take a look before taking the mushroom and stuffing it into his mouth. In the next second, his expression changed slightly as he slowly closed his eyes. He had a taste of something similar from some mutated tree roots, but it wasn't as pure or memorable. After an unknown period of time, he looked at the indifferent Jayman sparrow and said with an abnormally sincere tone, "Your Excellency, we would like to listen to Mr. Fool's teachings. I haven't had the time to make it up yet. However, as I'm getting closer and closer to being an angel, the corresponding matters should be prioritized. The anchors need to be prepared in advance." As his thoughts raced, Klein recalled what he had said when he had tricked. No, come up with to reform the believers of See God. His expression quickly turned solemn as he raised his right hand and grabbed at the void. He pulled out a cross covered in bronze and sharp spikes. Following that, he pressed his right thumb onto a thorn, letting the blood enter the unshadowed crucifix. The bronze-green surface of the unshadowed crucifix quickly peeled off, revealing a body made of pure sunlight. "God said." Klein opened his mouth and said in a low voice as he raised the resplendent cross in his hand a lot higher. Warm and bright light surged out like a tidal wave, instantly filling the surrounding area. The darkness and discomfort accumulated in the bodies of Nim, Ruse, and company began to rapidly melt away. It was as if their bodies were being cleansed. They were in a daze when they heard the oracle, who was holding the resplendent cross and covered in holy radiance, solemnly say, "God said. First commandment, thou shalt not sacrifice unto me living human sacrifices. Second commandment, thou shalt not use my name in vain.